Welcome to the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Season 9, the Accountability Episode Part 2. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm Steve Dennis.
On this special bonus episode of the pod, our season finale. We wrap the season looking back to the balance of Steve's predictions for 2024, and we get to hear Steve in a reflective mode as he grades his prediction superpowers.
Or lack thereof, as it turns out.
A note to our many listeners that we'll be off for the next 2 weeks, then releasing a special encore episode featuring Primark's U.S. President Kevin Tulip before returning with Season 10. That's right, we've been renewed for Season 10 on Tuesday, January 14th, while we were at the NRF Big Show in New York. So it's a great time to catch up on past episodes and, be sure and drop us that 5-star rating if you get a chance in Apple or in Spotify or your favorite podcast platform. Special shout out, by the way, to Retail Journal. Just selected us as one of the 4 podcasts for the retail enthusiasts. So shout out to Retail Journal. So if you're a supplier to the retail industry and are looking for a media venue that is in thousands of years of movers and shakers and decision makers in retail, if you want to be, as we turn our minds to Season 10, we're having lots of great discussions with, if you would have heard over the many seasons, we've had many great partners, and we continue to develop new opportunities to reach our audience. So if you want to become a podcast sponsor or talk to us about helping us grow your business, speak at your event or whatever, do a panel, reach out to us in the next few weeks as we approach Season 10. All right, well, let's get started. Let's pick up where we left off. We did the first 6 of your 2024 predictions, and then you grade your prediction. We talk about your prediction, then you grade it. So let's start with number 7 on this episode, Neiman Marcus and Saks merge. I got to think you're going to have a pretty good outcome in terms of grading on this one.
The deal has not closed yet, but apparently it's imminent. But well, first of all, I wrote, said and written some things about how I believe that a Saks-Neiman's merger was inevitable. The reason really is that the multi-brand retail format in general, whether we're talking about luxury or more moderate, continues to struggle. Lots of issues generally with the growth of the luxury industry. Saks has been facing liquidity issues, but I think both businesses have really not been growing much, if at all, and profitability has been, let's say, mixed. And there really is just too much capacity chasing too little demand. In fact, I think I said this on the podcast once, but years ago when I was working at Neiman Marcus, we tried to project as we were looking at new market expansion, really how many stores could a given market hold. And even way back then when the luxury market was stronger, there were many markets that basically could only support one store. Or, our model would show like 1.2. And in fact, just as a quick anecdote, our analysis showed that for the Austin market, and Saks had a store in Austin. And, it was sort of a question of whether or not we should open there. Well, we did open. And the result of that was Saks closed because the market could not support 2 luxury stores. So that situation has really only gotten worse. And so this is kind of a classic. The market needs to contract, needs to consolidate. So the deal got announced several months ago, cleared the regulatory hurdles. There was definitely some concern, like we saw with Kroger and Albertson and Capri and Tapestry, that maybe would be seen as anti-competitive. But anyway, that didn't happen. HBC, as we talked about, I think in the news segment last episode, just secured financing at quite a high rate, good old junk bonds. And it looks like it is happening. So yes, I would say, even though it technically is not closed, I would give myself an A+. One little thing I would just mention, I feel this is a pretty risky deal, even though, like I said, I believe it's inevitable. And there's some, strong reasons to do it. But I don't think this merged company is going to have an easy go of it. Not only are the dynamics broadly challenging and some headwinds in the segment, but the high interest rate and the amount of debt is, to me, very concerning. And I expect one of the unfortunate results, they've said in the discussion around this deal that there would not be a lot of cost takeouts. There would not be a lot of store closings. My guess is they're going to find themselves, not necessarily, the first few months, but over the next year or two, needing to be quite a bit more aggressive to be able to make the deal work.
So a footnote to your footnote, I was thinking about the deal structure, and there's a couple of interesting characters there. Salesforce and Amazon, who are apparently going to contribute something to lift them from a technology perspective. It's like a contra deal. Does this make you more optimistic about the outcome and the chances of success?
Not really. I mean, it's hard to say because there hasn't been a lot revealed about it. I mean, certainly Saks Global can have partnerships with Amazon Web Services and Salesforce independent of them being involved in the deal. It is unusual, as far as I know, for either company to be minority investors in a transaction. It's not clear to me why that happened, but I think right now we just don't know whether that really adds anything to it, other than, presumably they'll work hard to make the deal successful.
Yeah.
But I'm really not sure I understand that very well.
All right, number 8, and we're still in the department store sector here with Nordstrom, and you predicted they would go private. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Nordstrom going private, but where do we sit with it today?
Well, I'm going to have to grade this as an incomplete because it's not really clear where it stands. So they announced that they were going to make another run. The family was going to make another run at taking the company private. The rationale here is, some of the same issues as we just talked about with Neiman and Saks, is that the sector is under a lot of pressure. Multi-line department stores are challenged. They really need to do something different to try to get the company on a better trajectory. And, so there's some urgency around doing this. And I think the general argument is if you go private, you perhaps can have a little bit more time, do some things that the pressure of the public markets wouldn't allow you to do. So it makes a certain amount of sense. But this attention to do this got announced. Part of the original announcement was that Liverpool, the big Mexican department store, was going to be a major investor. But things have been pretty quiet for several months. So it is pretty unclear where this stands. And I don't know if that's just they're working on the financing. The stock price has gone up because Nordstrom's performance has actually improved a little bit. So maybe the urgency isn't there. So I guess I got it right in that this was going to move forward.
Yeah, lots to talk about.
But I just can't really grade it because it hasn't happened. It's not clear that it's still going to happen. But I imagine we'll hear more about this soon because just the lack of information for several months, you'd think they're going to have to say something about it.
All right, number 9, Apple's Vision Pro is a big nothing burger for now. This is actually, you had the most, I thought one of your most clever statements. Isn't that spatial?
Yes, this is the, people will probably remember a little over a year ago, all the noise about Amazon's new Vision Pro face computer. Yeah. Some people mockingly called it, and that it was going to usher in the era of spatial computing. People not being really clear exactly what that meant. I don't think the world, our understanding has been advanced significantly. I think, the reason why I thought it would be a big nothing burger, not some people that listen to this podcast probably listen to or are familiar with Scott Galloway's opinions about this, was that it was going to be a disaster. And I'm not sure we can declare it that as such. But the form factor, i.e. this big computer on your face, and the $4,000 price tag to me were really non-starters for this being any kind of thing beyond a kind of niche product.
The other thing that I didn't think about, but then discovered, it arrived in Canada a little later, so I was in an Apple store, and I'm like, maybe I'll give it a try. But then I'm like, do I want to put this thing on that's been on like 1,000 faces? Like, I didn't even want to, notwithstanding the cost and all the other thing, I was kind of curious, right? I'm kind of curious what it looks like. But I'm like, I don't want to put it on. Man, I'm a bit of a germaphobe, I guess. But still, it's not like you can pull a phone out and play with it. But I think that's a barrier of some way, shape. So that's our encouragement. I think if you want us to talk more informed about it, Apple, if you're listening, send us to, and
I think so. I think we need to be much more well informed about this. But in any event, the reason why I said for now is I do think there is some promise for this sort of technology, but the price has got to come down a lot. It's got to be more acceptable, I think, to wear it in public. So maybe the applications will be, gambling, pornography, et cetera, where a lot of things start, or, call centers or some other
as they all tend
B2B kind of uses. But anyway, I would say I nailed this prediction. I mean, Apple has not had much success with this. They cut production due to slow sales fairly early on. The number of apps that were released on the store really started to tail off really within weeks. And frankly, don't hear very much about it. So I think if we were about to get the next iteration of this anytime soon, there'd probably be a little bit more buzz. But so we really haven't heard whether Apple is actually, there's been, I guess, two schools of thought. One is they're just going to let it sort of slowly die, but others that it's going to take some time before there is the $1,500 version. But in any event, they obviously have a ton of money to invest in
money's
this.
Money's not the issue with Apple. But it's rare. I can't think of a product. I mean, they killed the Apple car before it got out of the crib, so to speak. Didn't even get launched. I can't think of another product though that they put the fork in after it launched. It feels like they're going to stick with it to me until they kind of get it right. And that could be 10 years from today. That maybe could never, but it's rare for them to pull something entirely,
Yeah. I think best case, we won't get any news on this until 2026. I don't think this is like around the corner. But anyway, so I gave myself an A.
Very good. So the next one is really super interesting because I want your opinion as you kind of roll through this around whether this is a factor of where the economic conditions are for consumers or whether this is just a behavioral attitudinal thing. And that's sustainability schizophrenia hitting new heights.
And what I mean by this is that we hear lots of talk and, both from brands and consumers about how important purpose is and sustainability in particular. But when you actually look at the behavior, you don't really see that playing out so much. So we still hear lots of news about the interest in sustainable product. And, there is plenty of activity, certainly growth in resale related stuff, whether it's brands doing their own resale programs or things like we've had the founder of ThreadUp on here, Poshmark, those kinds of things, Newly with rental product. I mean, there's still plenty of activity. Sure. It's not like Patagonia and others that are sort of famous for this have backed down. Plenty of news around the negative environmental impact of returns and efforts to reduce that. Yet, the other hand is just enormous growth from Temu and Shein, which are not exactly the paragons of sustainability.
Direct to landfill model. Yeah,
direct to landfill, as you like to call it. Yeah. Amazon launched Haul, which is in kind of a similar vein, and lots of cheap and cheerful product that does not really help the world at large. So I think this, I gave myself an A minus. Probably argue exactly the integrity of that grade because it's not super data informed, but I definitely think you have lots of talk, some effort in terms of working on these issues, but it's greatly overshadowed by the huge growth of brands that clearly aren't advancing the sustainability goals.
It does feel like the momentum is not with them. It does not feel like they've got a lot of momentum to move that file forward, as the lobbyists would say, so to speak.
Well, if you just do, and these are somewhat illustrative numbers. I haven't really penciled this out, but for every good piece of work that certain companies are doing to improve sustainability, if you've got multi-billion-dollar brands like Temu and Shein and others that are moving the ball in the other direction, like it's
drinking from a paper straw ain't going to help.
There's a rude expression for this, and I won't say it, but people probably know what it is.
Number 11, bailing still doesn't fix the hole amongst those stuck in the mediocre middle.
Well, anybody who's followed my work knows that I talk a lot about the mediocre middle and how there's basically death in the middle over time. And part of my response, which is a little bit more what I take head on in my newer book, Leaders Leap, is half measures avail us nothing. Like when you really are behind, you cannot just do incremental improvement. And what we continue to see are brands like Macy's, Kohl's, JCPenney, et cetera, in the US, but also HBC in Canada, John Lewis in the UK, and many others that talk a lot about these turnaround efforts, have new executives, new programs that get a lot of attention, I guess, but really have not moved the dial at all. Not to talk about the news so much, but in between the part 1 episode and the part 2 episode here, JCPenney released their results, and they've been at this new turnaround for 3 years, but sales down 8%, still losing money. So, we see lots of things like cost cutting, store closings, merchandise adjustments, maybe new collaborations or whatever. But, what we look at in terms of the results is Kohl's, Penny's, Foot Locker, a bunch of other folks have shown no evidence of meaningful improvement. Macy's arguably has a glimmer of hope. They're mostly pointing to their first 50 stores that are getting kind of these accelerated improvements, performing better than the rest of the chain. I was on a webinar yesterday when I said I'd like to believe that that's evidence of progress, but the 50 stores are also their best stores to begin with. So you don't really have a control, or they haven't shared enough data to know whether that's just, your top stores do better than average. You didn't need to do anything for that to be true. That's just math. So now Gap, for example, has shown, some more meaningful results. So we do see some possible examples. Marks and Spencer in the UK, I would say, has had some meaningful success. So this is not 100% the case, but I would say by and large, these efforts are not really yielding much. So I would grade myself as a overall on this one.
Number 12, going in a slightly different direction, health-related services are this year's retail media networks. I'm not sure last year was retail media networks or next year's retail media networks in large, other than the big guys, but talk about health-related services.
Well, I was quite optimistic about, some of this gets to a little bit of the comparison to retail media networks, and certainly they're still going strong. But as you point out, it's very concentrated among some of the big players. But retail media networks are still going strong, and I thought that might be tempered a little bit. But the main thing was that health-related products and services would really start to get tremendous momentum. Now, this was a mix of what I thought was going to happen more or less within the physical realm, both for humans and for pets, by the way, because we don't want to leave our furry friends out of this.
Yeah,
but money. Also a number of players like Hims and others that are offering online health services, but also, and this does involve Hims in particular, but the growth of GLP-1, the obesity-related drugs would really explode. And that is happening. But, if I step back, I really thought some of the brick and mortar stuff would gain more traction. And not only has it not gained much traction, it's really gone in the other direction. Walmart, which was experimenting in this area, has pulled back. Mm-hmm. CVS and Walgreens and others in the drugstore space, where they were doing like minute clinics and some of these other kind of health-related services, they've really retrenched. So the brick and mortar for human stuff definitely did not play out the way I thought. Pets a little bit more. Mm-hmm. The GLP-1 stuff has exploded for sure, or at least expanded quite a lot. And Hims, which is one of my favorite brands, they have continued to do well. They've got like hair loss treatments, sexual dysfunction, et cetera. Their stock has just been on a tear. They also released, as many others did, these compounded GLP-1 drugs, taking advantage of kind of loophole in the regulatory world, and have had great success. So I would say probably charitably, give myself high grades for the GLP-1 and pets stuff, but very low grades on the human side. So that got me to a C+.
I'm generally confused about this one because I'm with you. It's not on my bingo card that all these retailers would try this and not be successful over time, as you would say, because it's such a huge, inefficient operation, and it's the biggest industry in America, right? So why wouldn't all these very sophisticated players be more successful? So yeah, that surprised me as well. So I'm with you on the C. I'm with you on the C plus. I'm there too. Number 13.
Miserable together.
We'll be miserable together. Well, if I'm going to be miserable with anybody, it'll be you, Steve.
Aw, that's so sweet.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Commercial real estate becomes a slow motion crisis. And I had this, when I do keynotes, this was like one of my first slides is like, watch out for this. This big challenge is happening. But yet, it's even more slow motion than I even thought it might be. What do you think?
That's where I came out too. My parenthetical on the prediction was if we're lucky, because I certainly did not want this to happen. It could be very bad for all sorts of reasons. The reason why I thought it, probably not too surprising, was that with all the work from home stuff, office occupancy, daily office occupancy has been severely impacted. And a lot of buildings are really struggling. And if you're not getting paid rent and you got debt payments and all this kind of stuff. So I really thought that
right? the Chrysler building in New York's in trouble.
There's some very prominent of buildings that are in serious trouble. We also went through the WeWork bankruptcy, and they have contracted quite a lot, but they had so much property that you thought, well, oh my God, if they have to close, completely go away or whatever, that's going to put a lot of space on the market. We're definitely not seeing a crisis. There are quite a few challenges and growing concerns, but I wouldn't say anything of major consequence has happened. Part of the reason is we've seen more return to work than I would have predicted. Some of it's, you've got the Amazons and other big employers, JP Morgan saying, you got to get yourself into the office 100% of the time or we're going to fire you. So that's made things not quite so bad. While WeWork did close a number of locations, it wasn't as pronounced as we thought. And some of people thought, well, that's just going to be a bit of a domino effect. So that hasn't really happened. So, we can't say we're out of the woods, but the picture is definitely way more optimistic as we sit here today than it was when I wrote this. So I wouldn't breathe a sigh of relief, but there definitely are several major properties like the Chrysler building and others, several banks that have a lot of exposure. So some bad things could still happen. But anyway, I would give myself a D because I pretty much got this wrong. But I'm happy to,
You're happy to be wrong.
To be happy to have been wrong. This would be a place where I would say I'm quite happy that I was wrong about this. So I didn't do so well towards the end of these predictions. I started strong and then I kind of faded with the last couple.
Well, all right. This sets the stage for the next round, which is our predictions episode, which will happen right after NRF. Maybe we'll pick up some intel, Steve, that will inform us about your predictions or inform you about your predictions. Hey, speaking of NRF, we'll be busy. Steve, let's start with, I arrive kind of earlier. I think I'm on Friday, you're on Saturday. What are we doing? First thing Sunday morning, right? We're busy. I guess we're being honored in the inauguration class, right?
I don't know if it's like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony. I have a feeling it'll be a little more relaxed, but yes, we're getting together with our fellow, I guess not nominees, awardees, in the inaugural class of NRF's Top Retail Voices. Yeah. So maybe we'll put a link. If we haven't done enough of the shameless self-promotion, we'll put a link so you can see our smiling faces along with some of our other excellent colleagues. And then later in the afternoon, Microsoft and Avanade are partnering to bring together a fun new idea. They're calling it the NRF Book Club. And so that afternoon, I'll be joining fellow authors April Sobral, Ron Thurston, and Carl Boutet, fellow Canadian, fellow to you.
Third amigo. Our third amigo.
Yes, our third amigo. And it's kind of a networking get-together, no PowerPoints, no presentations, just getting a chance to chat. Microsoft for startups, showcasing some of the startups they're working with. And the four of us will be signing books. So I do know that it's a relatively small space. And so space is limited. So we'll put a link in the show notes. You can also find that on LinkedIn. But I would, if you're interested, I would sign up right now. Go do it. We'll wait. Okay, now that you're back, thanks for doing that. We'll see you there.
While you're doing that, I'll be hosting my popular Canadian Retail Executive Store Tour as we turn the tables in January with a U.S. invasion of sorts. Spec out our soon-to-be 11th province. Steve, you're
I was going to say, when I heard that he who shall not be named wanted to make Canada the 51st state, I thought, well, I don't know, maybe a better deal is to become the 11th province. But anyway,
well, we're working on it. Now you and I will be together on the stage in a very impressive venue on Monday afternoon. Talk about it.
We'll be headed downtown to the Salonis headquarters in the World Trade Center. And it's a cocktail party of sorts, so networking and free food and all that good stuff. But also, and most importantly, ultimately, we will be doing a live on-stage version of the Remarkable Retail podcast. So you get to see how the sausage is made, get a few libations as well. And then, of course, we'll be releasing that episode a few weeks after that. But, we'll also be wandering around the show floor and Retail Rethink Gala and a whole bunch of other things. So if you see us, come say hi, do a selfie, ussy, whatever we call that. It should be fun. Hopefully the weather will be okay.
Well, for now, that's a wrap on our episode and a wrap on our season. As we said, we'll be back with season 10 in January. Join us then. Lots of links in the show notes about all the things we talked about for NRF and all kinds of different links that we referred in the site. Until then, Steve, I want to thank you for being my partner. Appreciate you and enjoyed another season together and sharing insights and listening to yours. And I wish you and yours a Merry Christmas and a happy holiday. And I look forward to, we'll see each other in person soon enough. So looking forward to it. We will.
Well, likewise, it's been a good year, and thanks for making me look good most of the time. There's a few things I quibble with, but there's only, you have to deal with what you're given, right? So, but thank you. Yes. Happy New Year to all our listeners. We appreciate the support, and we look forward to what is to come in the new year.
Thanks for tuning in. If you liked our episode, please take a moment to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts.
And I'm Steve Dennis, strategic advisor, keynote speaker, and best-selling author of 2 books, Leaders Leap, Transforming Your Company at the Speed of Disruption, and Remarkable Retail, How to Win and Keep Customers in the Age of Disruption. You can learn more about me, my consulting, and keynote speaking at stephenpdennis.com.
And I'm Michael LeBlanc, consumer retail growth consultant and advisor, keynote speaker, and media entrepreneur. You can learn more about me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.